Okay, and then I'm gonna share my screen. All right, and you don't have to put your thing on mute. You can ignore this. Let's see. Are you seeing the screen? The slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, terrific. All right, well, we are, and we're recording this. I have sent out the link for last week's. I haven't posted it. I meant to do that, but I'll get that posted on the YOTA website along with the link for tonight's meeting. And tonight is the second of 3 sessions that we're doing on the Artists Working in Community workbook. And the more I dig into it, the more I dig it. And tonight we're going to focus on community. Oops, that says session 2. Oh, that says session 2 out of 3. I did fix most things on it. I just didn't fix the title. We're on the 3rd out of 3 sessions. And tonight we're going to focus on community groundwork. So we've been talking about kind of like the artist groundwork, like understanding our values. And we'll talk more about what we have done in a second. But first, we're going to do a call for inspiration, reflections, and learnings. Any wisdom you've gained over the last week, any ahas, or even anything that's happened that you want to celebrate with this group. Then we'll talk about the community groundwork, and we'll do some YOTA updates, and I'll have a little time for question and answer. Again, with the Year of the Artist, we're advancing community goals, integrating artists in civic problem solving, exploring and experimenting, paying artists. We're strengthening the network, and this is probably this one. I don't know. I'm excited about lots of different pieces here, but this is the one that I think at the end of the year we're gonna go, wow, look at all these people I know now, who I am interested in working with further. I think this is going to be pretty powerful. We're going to connect, have fun, and engage with a sense of play. And we're going to build a learning community. And I feel like we're well on our way on those goals. So with that, let me open it up and see if anyone has any learnings, if they want to, or not learnings, but inspiration, good things. Who wants to share something? All right, Catherine.
Yeah, I was thinking about at our last session, how it was brought up that it's hard to explain this sometimes when you're with a group of people, or that sometimes in the public realm, people are like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. And I found that, I had a couple meetings this week, and I went back to one of the YOTA, it might've been your press release or something that was on one of the original writings, because I wanted just to grab a couple snippets of language just to have it in conversation. And I found 2 I really liked. One is community-driven, artist-led. Because you can't explain everything. People glaze over. You can't, and if you can just get a couple snippets. The other one I loved was exploring the role of creativity in tackling community issues. So just to anchor down a couple examples of what, the residencies are, or what the projects are, the self-portrait, with a little snippet, then it kind of makes it better than just, well, we're doing all these great things.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Right? So that was helpful.
Yeah, I think those examples, and that's why we did announce the first 10 Art Matters grants fairly quickly while we are still asking for more applications, so that we could demonstrate it a little bit. I feel like when you get those examples, it becomes more real. And that those first phrases, community-driven, artist-led, equity-focused, that's the mantra of our placemaking committee at the in the Arts Commission. So those are the kind of projects that they want to take on. Yeah, and then Susan posted that. Thank you very much, Catherine. Yeah. And then Susan posted a note. So this just came to me. I need to maximize the screen. Okay, I'll figure that out. Thank you, Susan. Okay, what's any other learnings or inspiration, good things? All right.
First of all, I haven't sat in on a Year of the Artist meeting in a while. I kind of came in at the beginning, and there's always reasons I can't come in. So I'm unfamiliar. So my name's Julie. I'm a musician here in Roanoke. I do Celtic music. And so I'm interested to see how kind of cultural folk music can fit into everything that You're the Artist is doing. So I'm here to learn that, but probably something that I saw in the last week is I'm part of an Irish music circle that happens every Monday at Big Lake Brewing. And I've just been really happy at the number of people who have been discovering this particular music circle lately and who have been entering the circle themselves. We try to keep it open. So it's always really cool. Irish music tends to skew old. We've been getting a lot of young faces, which is very important for this kind of music to keep it going. So that's just something I noticed recently that was joyful.
Yeah, nice.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I can think of many ways that a group like yours or just a musician can be part of, especially with an Art Matters grant. You know, I was surprised we didn't have more self-portraits that were musical self-portraits. But again, I think we talked about this, that it's like we need another word that feels as broad as possible, as inclusive as possible. An artist, you know, a lot of times people won't identify as an artist, or they'll think, okay, to be an artist, I have to paint something, it has to go into a frame, etc. So
yeah, I'm definitely looking for ways that music can fit into all of this and ways we can collaborate across genres, wanting to be in the conversation.
Great. Well, we're looking to continue that conversation. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Susan, who I apparently am stalking.
Yeah, he's stalking me like crazy today. I mean, like everywhere I've gone, he's been stalking me. So one of the things I wanted to share was I went to the Sidewalk Art Show and talked to a lot of the artists, and they all had good ideas for me, being a kind of relatively novice, like kindergarten artist. And one of the things they shared with me was an app called Value Study, which was a really cool app, but I have an Android phone, and so I can't use it, but I thought maybe somebody else could. And I would like maybe for you guys to share things that you think a new artist would find helpful. You know, that things that were, you know, like, oh, why didn't I know about this sooner? So, you know, as the time goes on, if you'll think about something and put it in the chat or do whatever, that would be great. Thanks, Polly.
Great. Thanks, Susan. And I should clarify, I'm not really stalking Susan, but I exercised my franchise this morning by going to vote, and there was Susan voting. And then I pedaled my bike downtown, and there she was downtown. She's everywhere. All right, Vicki. So you're on mute if you're talking.
Oh, am I on unmute now?
You are unmuted. I hear you loud and clear.
Okay. So to Julie's point, I just wanted to say that I'm kind of a crossbreed with the music and the art. I always loved music. And since I moved to this area, I'm actually over by Smith Mount Lake, but I am a retired art teacher. I was interested in finding other artists. So that's how I stumbled upon Roanoke. So, but since I moved down here, having been retired, I found out there was a steel drum band, and I believe our director comes from Roanoke, and he encouraged all of us.
And Vicki, I'll tell you where you left off. And he encouraged all of you to blank.
Okay, to play the steel drum. So also I play the harmonica, and I already talked about merging the love of the harmonica with my train painting and submitting the file so we could work something like that out. So I agree. I love the idea of merging different interests in the arts. That's very good.
Excellent. Thank you, Vicki. Polly.
Yes, I have low bandwidth too, so I don't know if I'm coming across okay, but I wanted to try to pick out just a couple of things out of my many examples. But I reviewed one of your last sessions and enjoyed the conversation about what is an artist? How do I see myself as an artist? What does that include, or how might it change over the years? And for me, art is as healing and opening up communication connections and trust, has been beautiful to witness in different groups. The amount of years it takes to build up some trust to get there is real. Privileged and honored to have had some years under my belt and some beautiful relationships that have guided me and taught me and expanded my view. So yeah, I'm more courageous to take on a musician part or fly a kite or get new art materials out, to once identifying, where a group might want to go in our explorations together. And so that's not very specific, but I think you know what I'm talking about. In some of my different block parties and festivals and places I've gone to meet the community in different neighborhoods.
Great. Thank you, Polly. Yeah, the relationship building, the time of being there and being present over the long haul, and rolling your sleeves up and working alongside, right? Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right,
It's fun.
Robin.
So I just wanted to take a minute to talk about how my community inspired me this past weekend. I'm Northwest Roanoke born and raised, and I won't sugarcoat it. Northwest Roanoke gets a really bad rep a lot of the times because it has we have gun violence that happens there, and when it happens, you're going to hear about it on TV, and it happens. It's something that really cripples our community. But I just want to shed light on the beauty of my community that I was able to witness, and some of you may have witnessed this past weekend. Northwest Roanoke was just such a beautiful place to be on Saturday. And we got to experience all different types of art, from visual art to performing art to spoken word and poetry to just, dance and performance, to vendors selling things from all over the place. And it was just a beautiful display of community, people coming together and just having a good time and being able to let their hair down and not worry or feel that they may be in danger or in any way, shape, or form. It was just a really beautiful day. And I just want to say that I'm super proud and inspired by my community, just after this past weekend, and not only at Eureka Park, but also later on in the day in Salem at the Black Heritage Night baseball game. It was a beautiful evening there as well. So I just want to just share that with the group, that after Saturday, I just feel even more inspired to do the work that we're doing in our community, and I feel energized.
Yeah, congratulations to the whole organizing team, the Roanoke Cultural Collective. Robin, I know your designs for that look terrific. It was a special day there. You just felt it. So thank you for adding that. All right, if there aren't any others, I'm gonna share my screen again. Susan's giving me a tip on how to do it the right way. I was doing it on the fly before, so I didn't do it quite right. Okay, now, oops. Oh, I don't need that. I need this one. So last time we talked about, we reflected on values, why we're doing the work that we're doing. We talked about personal and professional goals. We had a little conversation on strengths, your unique skills and perspective that you bring to a project that is invaluable. And we often will say, well, I don't fit the mold, and the conversation isn't shaped in a way that acknowledges my voice. or my perspective, or doesn't give me an avenue in the way that I like to be present and to engage. And that's exactly what we want to grab hold of. Those very specific things that are unique to you, that because it's not just you, everybody has these things that they are, they don't always bring out, that they don't feel like they don't belong in this council chambers. They don't belong in this conversation. And then it's not true. We do a disservice to ourselves. We do a disservice to our community. And it takes time. It takes a little bit of trial and error, right? Like, okay, let me put my big toe in the water and see how this feels. Now, there are so many people out there who could be putting their toe in the water and are just starting to. And we think that the work that you're doing, that we're all doing for the Year of the Artist, can model the way for that, can help people engage in a deeper way. And we talked about that spectrum of collaboration, and whether you're doing a project that is your project that you're applying in a community, or if you're doing a project that is being developed with the community. And tonight we're going to advance from that and talk about community relationships, stakeholders, and asset mapping. And again, in this little series, I should call it our summer solstice series, I guess. There are our little June series. We are just kind of touching. We're just putting our toe in the water. We're just getting a sense of what's in this handbook, because I think we're going to have some good opportunity to do some activities in person together that are going to help us. Catherine is going to be, who's on the call tonight. She's going to be developing some trainings, some workshops, some conversations like this in a deeper way throughout the year. We can do facilitation training so that when you're in a group and working with a group, you've got some tools under your belt to help bring out voices. But tonight we're going to talk still pretty high level about some of these things. And remember, we had that spectrum of collaboration where there was ideation, project planning, artistic design, implementation, creation, where you engage the community and how you engage the community. So our next step on that, the role of the community. And so the community, building on that spectrum of collaboration, there are many roles the community can take on. Here's one organization of 4 roles. The community can inspire your work. They can be a sounding board for your work. They can be a co-planner and designer for your work, or they can be a co-implementer. And these aren't mutually exclusive. You can engage people at every step of the way. But you've got a challenge with each one of these. So your personal challenge as an artist, if you're working with a community, a neighborhood, say, and they are inspiring your work, your challenge in your work then is to represent the community responsibly. If you're using the community as a sounding board, you're bouncing ideas off of them and hearing from them. If you're surveying the community, your challenge is to effectively gather and use input responsibly. And there's so many important words in there. Sometimes we ask the community things and we don't use it. I know. I've seen efforts that, went about kind of engaging the community, and the community never heard from them again. If you're gathering information, you are, no matter how you do it, we're all subjective beings. We've got a bias. So when we hear something and we frame it or reposition and paraphrase it back, we've got to be very, very careful in how we do it so that we're doing it responsibly. So whenever possible, if we're actually using the words of people in the community, that's better. I was talking to somebody who's interested in doing a film project. And I said, yeah, even with a film project, because there's editing, there's framing, and there's a lot of power in that framing. So if you're engaging the community as a sounding board, how are you doing it, using it, doing it responsibly? Now, co-planner or designer. So your challenge then is to facilitate the process, help participants get out of their comfort zone. So those people who may not be as the first ones to speak up, helping them look at things a new way. Because as you're working on a project, there is that opportunity too for sharing some of your skills and your knowledge. So you've got expertise as an artist, and just like Susan said, okay, well, here's a tip. This thing is out there. This tool is out there. There is opportunity for some education so that you're helping them look at things a new way as well, or consider a new way. And then you're going to generate a shared project plan, or a design. So if you're doing that with them, every time you bring in another partner when you're doing your work, it takes a little bit longer. That process is critical. And we've talked from the very get-go about how in the work of the year of the artist, our process is often going to be more important than the product. And this is where that comes into play. And then co-implementer. Your challenge is to guide and support the community in completing the project. So with co-implementer is a little bit more than, so you've got they've helped design and plan it, but when you're actually doing it, you're getting out there, you think of a community mural project like this, where the artist is setting, like maybe painting those guidelines, like here's where a red goes. So you're guiding them and then supporting them. Okay, well, here's a great way to hold that brush. All right, so let me stop there and just see if there are any comments, any observations, any stories from the field. Or even questions. And I'm playing with my thing, trying to get it so I can see you all again. There, now I see you. Okay. All right. If there aren't, we'll keep moving. Now, Polly started us off talking about this. Okay, community connections and relationships. And I will tell you, me personally, I know that I build strong relationships by working on projects with people. And I'm often uncomfortable in a setting unless you've given me a role. If I'm in, put me in charge of something and give me a reason to be there, a role, an obligation, or like a responsibility, I'm much more comfortable than if it was, say, a social situation, or you just said, hey, will you come to this meeting? I can already feel it. I can feel a little bit of anxiety in my belly forming. But if I work on a project with somebody, dig in deeply, feel like I'm really contributing, then I feel so much more comfortable the next time I'm invited. So that's how I'm built in building relationships. And there are other people out there who are kind of built that way too, who feel better if they feel like they're contributing something. But just know that different people come about building relationships in different ways. And you might have to think through, just because I build relationships by being in projects, working on projects, it doesn't mean that everybody does. Some people might like for me to sit down with them and learn about them and just ask them questions over a cup of coffee. And I'm pretty comfortable. I like coffee. I'm pretty comfortable doing that too. But as Polly mentioned, being a participant in the community, where it's not your project, but you're there helping, rolling up your sleeves, spending the time doing this over a long period of time, nothing can replace that time. There are so many reasons in our community why there is distrust. It can tie to many things, especially race in Roanoke, from the history of urban renewal, and much earlier than that. So there are lots of reasons why we've got to, kind of across the community, when you're working with somebody new, somebody who's just immigrated to the community. There are lots of reasons why we've got to step back, take time, build trust, and even check in on building a shared language. Questions are a good way to start building relationships. Sometimes we think we come into a community and we should know everything already. As much research as you do about a place and about a project and about a community or a neighborhood, nothing is going to replace talking with people who live there and who are involved. And you're going to have your own path to building relationships. You have your own organic way of doing it. If you're an artist, sometimes that is like getting out your art supplies and working in an activity with people. Before we go to, there are some basic tips. Before we go to that, let me check in now and see if anybody wants to throw some tips out for how they build strong relationships when they're working on a project. And bells are ringing again. Okay. Oh, there you go, Polly.
Well, consistency is the main thing that I've figured out, whether it's a drum circle or singing group or theater, role playing, a neighborhood meeting. It's hard to keep up with it all. But yeah, all I could do is just the best I can and focus in and give as much energy that feels helpful and participatory as an example of jumping in and trusting that whatever happens right now, it's going to be okay. and recognizing too, yeah, that the language and assumptions are different, and there will be confusions and assumptions made or judgments. And if you're lucky enough to be able to find people who are willing to say, hey, what did you mean by that? Or I was confused when such and such happened. Would you explain that or tell me what you were thinking? There's lots of different ways of asking questions or opening up topics to help people feel like we belong together.
Thank you, Polly. Any other thoughts? All right. Well, I'm gonna keep rolling. On page 28, they've got some tips in the workbook. They've got some tips for one-on-one conversation. And I grabbed some notes from it just so that we could touch on them. And they did, the big picture. Prepare before if you're digging in on a project. Prepare, be curious, ask questions. If you go in feeling like, and this is what I meant by building a learning community from as we've started on this. If we feel like we have to know the answer to everything before we start, we're not going to come up with any new solutions or strategies. We can't. We've got to be curious. We've got to say, starting from zero here. Tell me. And then listening. When they tell you, listen. So they have I thought this was kind of good, actually. They have a list of questions, and they have opening questions, and they have kind of like the next level questions. And the opening questions, and this is, we were at Juneteenth with our big wheel. We've got a big wheel that we spin, and it lands on an art category, and we ask a question about the arts. And the question is invariably, especially if you're a kid, sometimes we'll throw in like a little trivia question that's kind of fun for adults. But for kids, it's all about them. So if it lands on dance, the question is, show us your favorite dance move, which I love seeing. If it's music, like what's your favorite song? Or, oh, could you sing a couple of lines of that? Or what's the last story you read? So it's always really about them. And that's a great way to start. And that's really the same message that they give us in this guidebook. Opening questions. What do you enjoy doing? What do you like about this place? How has it changed? what groups are you a part of? That should be, who do you do your work? Who do you do your work? How do you do your work? Who do you do your work with? Think just real kind of basic questions, but really about about them. Now, if you were then if you were working on a specific, say, project, or there was a starting point that you knew that the neighborhood's working on something, you can talk to them about their experiences. And we love asking the kids questions about you, because they're the expert on you. They know the answer to those you questions. So that's one way of starting to build a relationship, rather than diving in with perhaps a really difficult topic that you really want to get to at some point. Say it's pedestrian safety. Maybe everybody has an opinion on pedestrian safety, but they might not. Right from the start, and to build that comfort. These relationship questions might be good, and who knows, they might turn around and ask you some of the same questions. Okay, and then the next level of questions. What is important to you? Those open-ended questions can be a little bit, you might want to have more of a basis for them. What is wonderful about working in this community? What is hard about working in this community? What tensions are there? What are you curious about? And what do you hope to learn one day? What would you love to share with others or teach others? So, and that is kind of a fun, those last two. I do an exercise sometimes where we write down, like what do you want to learn and what do you have to share? And then we just let people go around the group and kind of like mix and mingle and ask each other and say, hey, I'm looking for somebody who can do this, or hey, I know how to do this, and that kind of skill share. And it's kind of fun when you do it that one, do it very informally, where not everybody's listening to them, and they just get to kind of connect and hear from other people. Okay. So anything on relationships before we go on to the next?
Oh, I just have a question for the group, because again, I'm kind of coming in sort of for the first time in a month or so, or a couple of months. I was just curious, like for the people who are here, what kind of roles do you find yourself in when you're asking questions like these? Like, are some of you teachers, or are some of you community leaders? I'm just curious who we have in the group. I'm neither. If anybody.
Well, I'll tell you, I bet we have a mix. We have people who are considering projects, people who've been engaged in projects. But let's hear. And the people who are engaged, civically, in many ways, in addition to, directly through the arts. So let's hear some. Anybody want to share some? Catherine.
I will just share that I've asked these kinds of questions if I was doing a commission artwork for a group, whether it's a committee or a community group. And so I guess that would be as an artist. And I will say maybe the focus wasn't quite as much on process as it is now, which is very cool. But when I have found that when I've asked these kind of questions, if I am writing the answer down, even from every single person, and then revisit the question and say, okay, so when I asked what is wonderful about working in this community, here's what I heard, because then people have felt like I did write it down and it was said back. And is there anything else? Did I miss anything? I think I'm just adding that in as a element about asking the questions, because it takes it beyond just social. Social is so important. It's so wonderful. But then if you heard it, you wrote it, and you said, okay, did I miss anything? This is what everybody said. And you said it back. So it's kind of like what you were mentioning, Doug, about, writing it down. But that's my experience with asking those kind of questions in a group.
Well, thank you.
Molly.
Okay, so I've been around for about 35, 40 some years plus since being a teen and 20s, asking questions and learning about the world and working with Amnesty International and all sorts of different environmental groups or peace and justice groups, which in my age of almost 60 now, all comes back to simple communication skills, willingness to engage in the conflict and the difficult conversations and understanding our internal emotions in any moment. And all these things seem, I know, complicated, but it happens anyway as we create things together and question, how are we making these decisions together? What are our common goals? And you know, do we believe in a vision of a more beautiful way together? And so that's what I try to share, I guess, through my actions and through some setting up some opportunities for people to get together. Some of you might have seen the weaving in Wasina Park, which was just a simple way for people to come together and participate in the physical action of creating together, and then the quiet times to ask questions or chit chat or whatever, you know, feel that comfort and safety. And ideally, some of those same people might work with you again over the years to build something new and different. And so that's always interesting because there's so many people out there, so many opportunities.
Thanks, Paula.
you.
And we're sitting here and I kind of was thinking about this, and thank you, Julie. That was a really good question too. It prompted me to do some reflection and thinking. And I kind of feel like we lose a lot of opportunities to ask these questions. And I'm thinking Helen's here, Helen's on the Arts Commission. And I know that, like, you know, I've been involved with the organization for 15 years. And I know that we've spent lots of time in meetings, very formal setting in meetings, sitting next to people that we work with on these issues. And we don't even know these answers or questions. We haven't connected in that way, even with them. And I'm wondering how much stronger the organization would be if we took a little more time to connect in that way. When you know what's important to somebody, if you know what's driving them, what their experiences are, it really could change the decisions that are made around the table, the way that we interact. So it might be that sometimes just on the fly we think about, okay, well, I am curious about this person. Let me, you know, we've got 5 minutes here. Let me ask some questions. Yeah. Charlie, do you want to say something? Oh, Helen.
And I think it's really critical too that you listen to what they are saying. And even if you are not interested, you have to at least pretend like you're interested and ask maybe some second level questions of the person who's talking to you. And I found that to be absolutely critical in some of the organizations that I work with.
Thanks, Helen. I love that follow-up question. Yeah, going a little bit deeper and listening. Yeah. Charlie, were you? I couldn't tell if you were going to say something. Okay.
I had thought that it's a little more specific, maybe, but it's out of my own experience and interests that have developed. And the idea is that not that the art world is bad or evil, but I got bored with a lot of it. And that's what led me to doing public art and community engagement projects. And along with that, I just did this artisan trail thing in Floyd County here, and it's always it's nice to have somebody who's knowledgeable about art to walk in your studio and have a conversation. But I've come to see the people that don't have a clue about what art is, and they just heard about this place, and so they show up and they just don't know how to take it in. And to me, that kind of audience is more um, it's more precious to me, and it's kind of like in the religious circles. New converts are embraced if it's a good religious circle, and I think as an artist, I've come to value that, and I've tried to think of ways that I could do a project that the art world would support, because we need support to do things, but that takes me out of the art environment and into sometimes the heart of the community, and to I've done public art projects in cities where I said, I think I should talk to the mayor, you know, and the mayor doesn't have a clue about what we're going to do, but I feel like we've gained a lot of ground by whatever understanding the mayor has come to through that, artist engaging them. And so my project here for the Art Matters thing, I've said that I'd like to contact churches and invite them to host a sculpture of mine on the grounds. And I've had to come up with a reason. So why would they want to do that? And so that kind of putting myself into the position of engaging this sort of the rest of the world kind of, and then how do you do that, and what's important to them, and how can I help them have an experience with art that is something that opens their eyes to more possibilities about what art might be meaningful to them that maybe they had before.
Yeah, those are exactly those questions. Yeah. And then I can imagine that, you're working on this one project, but I can imagine those conversations fueling and kind of being in that cauldron as you're working on your next project too, I would imagine.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Great. Thank Susan.
I just wanted to mention, you guys were talking about doing like group input, but please remember that, people are like Doug, that they have a little knot in their stomach and don't want to speak up in a group. It's always good to have an opportunity for them to privately give information to you, and then you bring it to the group, as some of the suggestions, and that way it still gets heard, because sometimes some of the best information you're going to get is from some of the outliers. The ones that are very vocal may be leading the whole thing over the cliff, but some of the outliers may have more insight into what there needs to happen, and they tend to be very good resources.
Great point, Susan. And in fact, these questions are really oriented toward the one-on-one conversations, kind of getting people comfortable building that relationship. But they can apply as well, and we'll probably do, like I said, we can do a 2-day facilitation training if folks are interested in it. We've got the resources to do that kind of work, where we are looking at kind of the technologies of bringing out, full participation in a group setting as well. All right, great. So as we're digging in and you're thinking about projects, even if you're just starting to imagine it, like how with the Celtic music, if you're thinking like just starting to imagine it, it's good to think about stakeholders. And stakeholders are any individual, group, or organization who will be impacted by your project. And the earlier you identify stakeholders, the better off you are. So who would benefit from from it, who could object or be negatively impacted. And a lot of the kinds of projects I do, we talk with, we usually think, okay, there's a curmudgeon out there, and we want to get the curmudgeon involved early, so that we hear the challenges and we address them, and we try, and it's important information, so that we're designing it the right way. Because then there might be people that you don't want to involve in your project because of that. So we always kind of hedge or warn people, give them a little caveat. Your instinct might be not to include them because you know how because you've worked with them for, I work in a lot of small communities, and they're probably related to the person. They've lived with them their whole life, and they know how they are. Like, well, don't let that be the reason why you don't invite them into the meeting. Let's pull them in and talk to them and hear from them, and then design the project. Who has the power or authority to make decisions? Who has resources? Who's doing similar work? Sometimes if you start asking questions, there might be somebody else out there with a very similar idea who's already started down the pathway. And so as you're like exploring those stakeholders, some of those stakeholders might actually become collaborators. And I'll jump ahead to that. And again, those might be people who have resources, skills, and connections, the complementary or overlapping missions or programs. Somehow out there, and even in like the nonprofit world, which you would think would not be this way, there is turf and territory, and sometimes a reluctance to complement and fill in the gaps so that there's better coverage. And there can be, like I said, well, turf issues is probably the best way to describe it, with people doing the same work in slightly different ways, and competing for funding when there's another completely unmet need. So the groundwork of understanding with the lay of the land, who the stakeholders are, can lead to who potential collaborators are, could even lead to, we've got to be in that honest state of inquiry where a project could die because it's not needed. Somebody else is doing it. Okay, well, how do I support them in their project, or how do I help them, advance that? Because what I really care about is that being done. Because there are a million projects out there, right? There are so many. If somebody came to me and said, okay, we applied for this Art Matters grant and we want to do this project, we found out someone else is already doing it. The response would be, okay, well, that's great. A, how are you supporting them? And how, what do they need? Is there a way the community can support them if they're not already being supported? And then B, what kind of project do you want to take on? How do you want to step back now and still have access to the funding? So we want that honest inquiry around it. And even though these are pretty informal, like on the Art Matters grants, they're pretty informal grants. Well, they're very formal because they're federal grants, but the application is, they're pretty fast turnaround application. So we understand that you've done some due diligence, but you have to do more due diligence once you even get under contract as you're working on your project. Because again, the process is as important as the product, and we want you to dig in and learn. And let me step back. Okay, asset mapping. And this is one of the kind of things that we might do. We might take a project and do some asset mapping in a group together. It's terrific. This is the format they have. I usually use the 7 capitals structure. This is a little tighter. They say, okay, you want to have categories. So if we give people categories and we start kind of listing things, the categories can help us think a little bit deeper. Gives a little prompt. Key individuals, organizations and institutions, organized groups and associations, the physical environment, and methods of exchange, which could be stores, banks, etc. Kind of commerce, could be a barter. If there's a barter, a place people go to trade things, that could be in there. Sometimes what it will do when we want to, the way I really prefer doing it is to have a blank slate and ask people like in a neighborhood, okay, what are your key assets? What are the things that you've got to build on here in the neighborhood? And they'll come up with, they might not have any people. They might not think of people as an asset, which is fine at first. But we'll take what they've given us, and in a facilitation training, we can go through this card storming strategy, which I love because it gets everybody participating, gets so much information out on a board at one time. And there's some tips that we can go through in using it. It's my favorite go-to. But you can do it with a blank slate and then take what they've got and group them. Say, okay, what do you see here? And let the group kind of work with the information. And they'll say, oh, well, you know what? There are a whole bunch of stores. Let's put those stores together. And there are a bunch of these are people. Then they'll come up with these. And then once you establish the groups, then you can go back and go deeper. Okay, well, what other individuals are out there? Okay, what other organizations and institutions are out there? And you can develop a really pretty comprehensive list very quickly with a group of people. And it does what we want to model. We're mining the collective wisdom of the group. We're not giving them an answer. We're letting them develop it. So that's asset mapping, and it's not difficult at all. And I bet you all have done it with groups before. But it's a terrific thing, especially if we're working with a group that feels that they're under-resourced. Because we can be working with a neighborhood, an organization, and they'll say, oh, we could do so many things if we just had some money. We just had the money. Well, you know what? I work on programs all the time. We'll give a small grant to a community and we'll say, hey, here, you have $3,000, you can do a project. They'll not only do one project, they'll do 3 projects, and they'll have half the money left over. And they'll realize that they didn't need the money to do the project. They just needed to organize around it. Okay, so that's asset mapping, and we'll have time to go deeper into that. Let's see. Again, it's 7:56. I want to highlight, this is just for fun. Does anybody want to read out our key practices for artists working in community from Springboard for the Arts? Anybody got a good speaking voice tonight?
I'll do it. I'll participate.
All right, thanks, Julie.
Okay, Springboard's key practices for artists working in community. Be humble, work in collaboration, stay in listening and learning mode, be responsible and responsive to the community, be transparent and communicate, be ready to work through tension and conflict, see assets and opportunities where others may not see them, work from existing assets, people, places, cultures, connections, resources, recognize who holds power and influence, and seek out those who are less represented or heard, know what you bring, skills, passions, resources, and know what you are missing.
Excellent, thank you. It's good to hear somebody's voice other than mine. And our updates, let's see, the Art Matters grants, this round is due August 1st. We'll probably go ahead and close it August 1st and then reopen it fairly closely on the heels. We've got 24 grants to give out. I probably have maybe 6 or so that are in the queue. My goal is to, like right now, is to be in kind of project development and keep working with people. So we know, and we talked about it last time, that word of mouth is the best way. And I have heard, one of the best things, I was in the library interviewing somebody on the camera, and somebody overheard me and they said, oh yeah, I was going to apply for one of those. And as somebody I didn't know, I was like, yes, that's terrific. But somebody had told them about it. So keep spreading the word on the Art Matters grants. We've got an opening on July 18th, 6 p.m. is the kind of the start of the viewing hours on it. 7 p.m. the council will proclaim the Year of the Artist, so everybody's invited to be recognized by council. Those inspired grants are still available if you want to get out and attend an event in the community. We'll pay for the tickets, especially as it's helping you think about how you're engaging and inspiring you for doing your project. We know how that works. Inspiration comes from all kinds of places. I will say this is our third of 3 in these June sessions. We're going to take a pause after this, and we're going to get the art show ready. Like I said, I got 40 some works in there and we've got to write the tags for them now and do all of that work. We're going to get that done. We're also going to we've got artists in residence who are under contract. They're meeting with their hosts now. We're getting those meetings set up gradually. And then we're probably going to have a little gathering of those folks just so that everybody knows what other projects they're working on. The idea with the Art Matters, or the artists in residence, that we're going to promote those a little bit later, maybe in September, where the artists have a chance to get in and get grounded, because the artists are going to be able to be spokespeople for the projects they're working on. Or if they're say there's Christine Carr's doing stormwater, she'll be comfortable talking about what stormwater does in the community. And we want to make sure we get that comfort level before we engage the media. And so we'll get a little quiet for just a spell on these conversations, but we're also building a calendar of training events that will be some online, some in person, some that we have to register for, and we'll have to cut off registration. Some that will be wide open and kind of casual, but those will be around developing your small business. Catherine's got a few that she's doing. We're going to have one with incorporating movement into projects. So these are going to be wide and varied, and we'll develop a calendar, and we'll probably try and I think Polly used the word consistency. We'll probably stick with one night of the week where we do it, where we know, okay, if there's something happening, it's going to be on. We've been using Tuesday night. I don't know if Tuesday is still the best night or not, but we'll check in with you all and see. But that's where we're headed. And I want to thank you for being on the call. And then let's see if you have any questions about or any comments about the relationship building and asset mapping and all of that related to tonight's content, or if you have any questions related to the Year of the Artist and where we're headed.
On a call that I was on like months ago, someone brought up wanting to be able to network with other artists, but it's very difficult to know what kind of art someone does unless they state it. And they mentioned making a directory or something like that to kind of facilitate that. I was wondering if that was ever discussed, or if that could be a good idea for anybody else, because I certainly struggle to know who the artists are in the community, especially outside of music. You have to go into people's spaces to find them usually.
Yeah. And we have, there's an artist directory that's out of Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge that is underused. It may not be exactly the right tool that we need. We used to have an arts council that did that, and Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge took it on from the arts council when it collapsed. And I do think it's a need, and it's a big undertaking. We've got a good start. We've got 350 artists who have registered for the Year of the Artist, and that's just the tip of an iceberg, right? And so we've asked people what kind of art they did. So we've got that information, which could be a starting point. I've had 2 people who have reached out and said, hey, I can kind of do this. This is something that I'm built to do. And I am open to exploring doing that, as long as we're doing it as a network. And we are thinking, okay, what does it take to keep this going once we get it established first? How are we going to organize? So I can see that being a result of somebody's initiative and some of the Year of the Artist resources even. I will say we've got an artist in residence who is going to be, Samantha Meyer is going to be our chief communicator and network builder. So she's going to be getting word out and kind of doing a better job than I've been doing of kind of keeping us all rolling. And she's also tasked with kind of creating the document or the storytelling tool that we're going to have at the end of this. It's sharing what we're learning
Okay.
and pulling that together.
Yeah,
We
I was-
also, I got one more piece. We also have a network weaver, Katie Trozo, who does the circle singing. She has a PhD and works at Virginia Tech, and this is what she does too. So she's going to be she's tasked with watching us and helping us organize for these next step things as well. What is going to advance the network? What's going to be self-driven? Like, how's the network going to be self-driven? So she's going to be able to help us with that too. But I do think right now, if you go on Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge and you look at the artist directory, it does not reflect what a vibrant arts community we are. And so we've got to figure out either how to populate that or how to help them with an additional tool.
I was just wondering, because in terms of the questions and the conversations we were encouraging tonight, sometimes you don't know what questions you can ask because you don't know what the person you're talking to, what they have to offer. Like, I came on and I told you that I'm a Celtic musician, but I also work with the Virginia Tech Medical School. So I also kind of have a hand in the bucket of medicine and education. And so there are ways to connect those sorts of dots with all sorts of artistic things. You just don't know to ask.
And they're not, and people aren't going to offer it. And usually it's the other way around. Usually we would know that you, like, your professional life at the medical school, usually that'd be the information. But the fact that you're a musician and that could help us in this, in ways that we hadn't considered, we don't know, because people will often keep that, that part of themselves a little hidden.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's fun seeing it the other way. Yeah. And we're doing an episode, we're sponsoring these Buzz for Good episodes that on July 27th, the one about the healing arts will take place, focusing on Crillion and some other nonprofit organizations that
It's a
are
really cool program they have there.
Yeah. And I was just we were just at the medical school last week for the reception for the art show. It was really good.
Awesome.
Any other comments or thoughts before we wrap up? Well, thank you. I'm going to hit stop recording.